Evening everybody. Welcome to the Architecture Foundation's bedtime reading, curated by Alicia Pivereau. I'm Lara Kinneir. Welcome. So, I'm going to read from a writer called Ben Okri, who isn't very well known. He's a writer and poet, and he has won the Booker Prize. When I was asked to do this, I scanned my shelves and there were many books that I could have pulled out. And what I've done tonight is gone for one that isn't your conventional book on your shelves of architecture books. So I'm taking a bit of a risk here, diving in deep, but if not now, when? So the reason I've chosen Okri's work is because of how he uses words to communicate very powerful things. And this feels like an important starting point as we consider where we are now and where we're going as human beings and as those involved in shaping the spaces that humans inhabit. As we remain confined in our homes right now, we cannot see things for ourselves, and we are reliant on others to communicate through word and image. It makes the words and images even more important. There have been many occasions when I've been really frustrated over this last few weeks at how things have or have not been explained about our current situation. Social distancing instead of physical distancing is one of my ongoing irritations. It's not about social, it's about the physical distancing. I'm a very visual person. A picture really does say 1,000 words to me. But words can be equally as powerful, and the use of words has been something I have thought a lot about in my explorations as a designer of spaces that people inhabit. It can be very easy to make our propositions sound far more complicated than they are, and this causes us many problems when we're in the process of trying to convey an idea and communicating the impact that we are trying to achieve and for whom. One of the most challenging but also rewarding experiences was when I was in my third year of my undergrad in architecture, and I took myself off to Madrid for my final year, which was quite mad because I didn't really speak much Spanish and I had to present all my work in Spanish. But what it did do was clear out all the rubbish that I had gathered in the previous 2 years, and forced me to explain things in very simple terms, but yet as powerfully as possible. I've often since thought that I should do that more regularly, try and present ideas in a foreign language, and perhaps it's something that should be something that we all do to clear out our inherited complicated language. Words and drawings definitely need to work hand in hand. So perhaps these readings tonight can conjure up some thought on how we can communicate to each other during this period of lockdown, what we communicate, and how we consider what will change on the other side of this, particularly in how we communicate what is really important for us as human beings in order for us to flourish in the spaces we inhabit, the spaces we dream of, and the spaces that we create. And so to Okri. So Okri grew up in Nigeria, moved to London, moved back to Nigeria, and this is very much reflected in a lot of his writing. So the book is called A Way of Being Free, and it's a series of 12 essays. And I'll just read the introduction to position it, and then I'll read 2 of the essays. Let me just keep an eye on my time. Great. So, introduction. These essays begin as notes to myself in a semi-poetic spirit. They were moments of poetic thought in prose. When I find myself in a new city, I often like to go wandering. These wanderings are pleasant and reveal a place in a light I may never experience again. These pieces are like such wanderings. I've always enjoyed reading essays. As a boy in Nigeria, I discovered the essays of Montaigne, Bacon and Hazlitt in my father's library. They were like taking a stroll with thoughtful beings. It is for me an axiom that words create a mysterious reality. That is why my approach to writing essays has always been a personal one. I always aim for uncluttered expression. It seems more courageous to express your thoughts clearly and simply. Nothing is more difficult than knowing what you really think. It is a curious thing to say, but it is easier to be complicated and complex than to say something truly and simply. Rigour and logic are perhaps not much appreciated, yet without logic, without rigour, writing fails. It took me many years to rid myself of needless complexities. Some of my essays are not surprisingly about the art of writing. In the early years, I had to think hard about the art, and I did it through these private meditations. The aphorisms of which some of the essays are constituted are a tribute to my youthful fascination with the form. To say much, concisely, is a constant ideal. When it came to gathering my essays together for this volume, I lit upon the happy innovation of making the book into a suite, letting one of the essays run through the volume as a united theme. The essays in this volume all turn on the question of freedom, in art, politics, literature, and being. The threat to freedom is always there, and does not require dictatorship, authoritarianism, or a closed society. We carry the threat with us always, and it is as pernicious when it is unseen, unsuspected, or when we assume the world we live in is exemplary. All I wanted to do was to remind myself at all times to just sing my song, to sing it through all the difficulties and silences. I hope that those who read these essays might also enjoy mental strolling. They might also want to sing their unique song through the ambiguous times in which we breathe and dream. This was written in Little Venice in London in August 2014. So, to the first essay and a little drink. So the first essay is called The Human Race is Not Yet Free, and it was dedicated to Salman Rushdie. There are some quite challenging words in this, and there's quite a lot of talk about death, which is obviously very poignant at the minute. So I hope these words can reach you gently. The worst realities of our age are manufactured realities. It is therefore our task as creative participants in the universe to redream our world. The fact of possessing imagination means that everything can be redreamed. Each reality can have its alternative possibilities. Human beings are blessed with the necessity of transformation. Writers are the dream mechanisms of the human race. Narrative affects us the way dreams affect us. They share the same insubstantiality. They both have the hidden capacity to alter reality. Dreams may be freer because they are not composed of words. But when narrative fiction has entered us, it no longer exists as words either. We can control our novels and narratives to some extent, but we cannot control the effect they might have in the world. And we cannot wholly control our dreams. Sometimes at night we dream blasphemous and scandalous things. We dream murders and transformations. We sometimes even dream ourselves into our deepest truths and our unlikely destinies. Hope you're still with me. I told you it was deep. There is no single way of interpreting dreams that is acceptable to all human beings. Writers create one book which becomes 100 different books in the minds of those that read it. To some, this one book is an object of light, a revelation, an act of liberation. To others, the same book is a monster. Sometimes we dream strange things that make us wonder if there isn't a subversive inner self, an irreplaceable and mischievous spirit within, which delights in showing us just how false are the shapes, boundaries and rules by which we lead our lives. The subversive smiling inner self seems intent on showing us that we cannot get away with restricting the freedom and the mysterious nature of human beings. It may be that sometimes our dreams trouble and offend us so much that we want to restrain the impish freedom of this faculty. It may be that this faculty is telling us something that is too truthful for us to take. But this impish faculty of dreaming becomes more insurrective the more we refuse to listen to it. The thing we refuse to face in life feed the enormous appetite of this dangerous truth-telling inner faculty of dreams. The things we refuse to face in life become monsters in our sleep. If the things we face are greater and more important than the things we refuse to face, then at least we've begun the re-evaluation of our world. At least we have started to learn, to see and live again. But if we refuse to face any of our awkward and deepest truths, then sooner or later we are going to have to become deaf and blind. And then eventually we are going to have to silence our dreams and the dreams of others. In other words, we die. We die in life. The reality of what we are doing to one another is explosive. The secret content of our lives is terrifying. There is much to scream about. There are great pullulating lies and monsters running around in the seabed of our century. The river within us has become frozen than ever before. We need much more than Kafka's proverbial axe to crack the axe and make the frozen blood of humanity flow again. Something is needed to wake us up from the frightening depths of our moral sleep. The word orthodoxy conjures up for me a world in which people have reached the final station of how they define themselves. In the silent world, in the shadow world, there are always people dreaming of changing the configuration. There are no longer any stable frontiers between the imagination and the world. The facts of the world are sometimes more imaginative than the productions of our imagination. If reality is also a battle of contending dreams, then our enchantments, our silence, and our highest love should do the fighting. We live inside the dreams of others. We might be imprisoned in them. Exile is a fleeing from one dream to another. In the process we change, we metamorphise, and our new shapes are never settled. Living is a continual metamorphosis. Everything is change. Everything is relative. When we live with overwhelming orthodoxies, the eruptions within are greater. Then our dreams burst the banks of the acceptable. The greater the visible order, the greater the hidden disorder. There can be no absolutes. No absolute good or evil, no absolute way of living, no absolute truth. All truths are mediated and tempered by the fact of living. Being alive qualifies all things. That is perhaps why the ancient Greeks, the Egyptians, the Africans, and the Indians have so many gods. Each god is the abstraction of our different attributes and our different selves, which need to be acknowledged and nurtured in harmony with the whole. We have to accept our many selves and our one self. We need to be unified. All our different selves must breathe and be healthy. The side of us that dreams, the part of us that lives beneath the stream of forgetfulness, the body's need for celebration and ecstasy, the soul's need for work, the divine in us that quietly longs for higher union, the erotic in us that craves mortality's immortal joy. But when any orthodoxy comes along and tries to repress any of these needs or aspects, then the rebellious dreams are sooner or later going to break out and disturb the good sleep of the land. When hope is there for individual reality or authenticity, when the forces of violence and orthodoxy, the earthly powers of guns and bombs and manipulated public opinion, make it impossible for us to be authentic and fulfilled human beings, the only hope is in the creation of alternative values, alternative realities. The only hope is in daring to redeem one's place in the world, a beautiful act of imagination and a sustained act of self-becoming, which is to say that in some way or another we breach and confine the accepted frontiers of things. The other way is to undertake an integral migration, to become an exile within the interiors of the self. We accept, we change in some way, we go mad. We live two lives, become two people. We dislocate, we implode. Then our secret selves become more real than our external selves. Metamorphosis is the essential condition of a state of affairs. It is the true hidden reality that become apparent. The essence of things, of people, is truer than their visible forms. In a metamorphosis, the essential truth overruns the external illusion of truth. As you are, so you become. If you are insensitive to the world, you turn into rhinoceros. But there is more to it than that. The basis of metamorphosis is a simple one. It is anguish or ecstasy. Bet you the rhinoceros woke you up just there. In a world like ours, where death is increasingly drained of meaning, individual authenticity lies in what we can find that is worth living for. And the only thing worth living for is love. Love for one another. Love for ourselves. Love for our work. Love of our destiny, whatever it may be. Love for our difficulties. Love of life. The love that could free us from the mysterious cycles of suffering. The love that releases us from our self-imprisonment, from our bitterness, our greed, our madness, and our competitiveness. The love that can make us breathe again. Love of a great and beautiful cause, a wonderful vision. A great love for another or for the future. The love that reconciles us to ourselves, to our simple joys, and to our undiscovered repletion. A creative love, a love touched with the sublime. It isn't Kafka's axes we need. We also need the fires of love that thaw the frozen streams within. We need to look at one another afresh with new eyes. We need to keep doing that every day. We need to tear down the barriers wisely, or else we won't be able to get out and nothing will be able to come in. These are strange times. Many things stifle our dreams. We may be getting smaller. We should beware of turning into the rhinoceros. We should speak out, cry out, but not too much, or we won't be heard for the monotony of our cry. We should be silent and serene, and we should plan, but we mustn't be too silent, or we won't be heard at all. Before we can create a new world, we must first unearth and destroy the myths and realities, the lies and propaganda which have been used to oppress, enslave, incinerate, gas, torture, and starve the human beings of this planet. Facing the lies of history is a basic human responsibility. It is unpleasant to do, but liberating to accomplish. It liberates all of us. If anyone questions the validity of religions, it may be because they have failed us and let us down or made us smaller. By us, I do not mean those that are devout, I mean the entire human race. For in their names, in their codes and earthly domination, they have unleashed nightmares upon us. They have unleashed things that we don't want to see again. It may be that in the dream of their orthodoxy, some of the great religions lost touch with noble love that inspired and sustained their births in the first place. They lost touch with suffering of people, with hunger. They lost touch with the basic compassion without which even the most beautifully inspired religion becomes an empty shell. It may be that writers too have failed us. For, seduced by their freedom to entertain, they may have been ignoring the monsters growing in our sleep, monsters that may one day devour us. Writers have one great responsibility, to write beautifully, which is to say, to write well. Within this responsibility is that of being truthful, to charm, to amuse, to enchant, to take us out of ourselves. These are all part of beauty. But there is a parallel responsibility, and that is to sing a little about the realities of the age, to leave some sort of magical record of what they saw and dreamt while they were alive, because they can't really do it the same way when they're dead, and to bear witness in their unique manner to the beauties, the ordinaries, and to the horrors of their times. Writers are dangerous when they tell the truth. Writers are also dangerous when they tell lies. We are all witnesses. Carry on for as long as life carries you. If you can't, you may as well learn. Sometimes the opposite is best. It's not what you've experienced that makes you greater, but what you've faced, when you've transcended what you've unlearned. The best things are beyond words. The human race is not yet free. And just so you see how this is set out, so it is a series of sometimes short and then longer paragraphs. Okay, the second essay, which is much shorter and focuses on one thing as opposed to the multitude that I've just read out in that last essay. So the one thing that this next essay focuses on is words. So it's entitled Beyond Words, and it's for Robert Fraser. He's dedicated it to Robert Fraser. And perhaps as I'm reading about words, you can think about how we use words and how we describe the spaces that we imagine and create. We began before words, and we will end before them. It sometimes seems to me that our days are poisoned with too many words. Words said and not meant. Words said and meant. Words divorced from feeling. Wounding words. Words that conceal. Words that reduce. Dead words. If only words were a kind of fluid that collects in the ear. If only they turned into their visible chemical equivalent of their true value, an acid or something curative, then we might be more careful. Words do collect in us. They collect in the blood, in the soul. We seem to think that words aren't things. A bump in the head may pass away, but a cutting remark grows with the mind. But then it is possible that we know all too well the awesome power of words, which is why we use them with such deadly inaccurate cruelty. We are all wounded inside in some way or another. We all carry unhappiness with us for some reason or another, which is why we need a little gentleness and healing from one another. Healing in words and healing beyond words, like gestures. Words. In words and healing beyond words, like gestures, warm gestures, like friendship, which will always be a mystery, like a smile, which someone described as the shortest distance between two people. Yes, the highest things are beyond words. That is probably why all art aspires to the condition of wordlessness. When literature works on you, it does so in silence, in your dreams, in your wordless moments. Good words enter you and become moods, become the quiet fabric of your being, like music, like painting. Literature too wants to transcend its primary condition and become something higher. Art wants to move into silence, into the emotional and spiritual conditions of the world. Statues become melodies, melodies become yearnings, yearnings become actions. When things fall into words, they usually descend. Words have an earthly gravity, but the best things in us are those that escape the gravity of our deaths. Art wants to pass into life, to lift it. Art wants to enchant, to transform, to make life more meaningful or bearable in its own small and mysterious way. The greatest art was probably born from a profound and terrible silence, a silence out of which the deepest enigmas of our lives cry. Why are we here? What is the point of it all? How can we know peace and live in joy? Why be born in order to die? Why this difficult one-way journey between the two mysteries? Out of the wonder and agony of being comes these cries and questions, and the endless stream of words with which to order human life and quieten the human heart in the midst of our living and our distress. The ages have been inundated with vast oceans of words. We have been virtually drowned in them. Words pour at us from every angle or corner. Sometimes they have not brought understanding or peace or healing or a sense of self-mastery, nor has the ocean of words given us the feeling that, at least in terms of tranquility, the human spirit is getting better. At best, our cry for meaning, for serenity, is answered by the greater silence, the silence that makes us all seek higher reconciliation. I think we need more of the wordless in our lives. We need more stillness, more of a sense of wonder, a feeling for the mystery of life. We need more love, more silence, more deep listening, more deep giving. On a human scale, there are many things beyond. A famous writer, feeling his life coming to an end, writes these words: "My soul looks back and wonders how I got over." A young woman standing on a shore looks out into the immense azure sea, rimmed with the silver line of the horizon. She looks out into the obscure heart of destiny and is overwhelmed by a feeling both dark and oddly joyful. She may be thinking something like this: "My soul looks forward and wonders, just how am I going to get across?" That is beyond. A flamenco dancer, lurking under a shadow, prepares for her terror of her dance. Somebody has wounded her in words, alluding to the fact that she has no fire. She knows she is to dance her way past her limitations, and that this may destroy her forever. She has to fail, or she has to die. I want to dwell for a little while on this dancer, because, though a very secular example, she speaks very well for the power of human transcendence. I want you to imagine this frail woman. I want you to see her in deep shadow and fear. When the music starts, she begins her dance with ritual slowness. Then she stamps out the dampness from her soul. Then she stamps fire into her loins. She takes on a strange, enchanted glow. With a dark, tragic rage, shouting, she hurls her hungers, her doubts, her terrors, and her secular prayer for more light into the spaces around her. All fire and fate, she spins her enigma around us and pulls us into the awesome risk of her dance. She is taking herself apart before our sceptical gaze. She is disintegrating, shouting and stamping and dissolving the boundaries of her body. Soon she becomes a wild, unknown force, glowing in her death, dancing from her wound, dying in her dance. And when she stops, strangely gigantic in her new, fiery stature, she is like one who has survived the most dangerous journey of all. I can see her now as she stands shining in celebration. In the silence that follows, no one moves. The fact is that she has destroyed us all. Why do I dwell on this dancer? I dwell on her because she represents for me the courage to go beyond ourselves. While she danced, she became the dream of the freest and most creative people we had always wanted to be, in whatever it is we do. She was the sea we never ran away to, the spirit of wordless, self-overcoming we never quite embrace. She destroyed us because we knew in our hearts that rarely do we rise to the higher challenges in our lives, in our work, in our humanity. She destroyed us because rarely do we love our tasks, our lives enough to die and thus be born into the divine gift of our hidden genius. We seldom try for that beautiful greatness, brooding in the mystery of our blood. All art is a prayer for spiritual strength. If we could be pure dancers in spirit, we would never be afraid to love, and we would love with a strength and wisdom. We would not be afraid of speech, and we would be serene with silence. We would learn to live beyond words, among the highest things. We wouldn't need words. Our smiles, our silences would be sufficient. Our creations and the beauty of our functions would be enough. Our giving would be our perpetual gift. We should return to pure contemplation, to sweet meditation, to the peace of silent loving, the serenity of faith, to the stillness of deep waters. We should sit still in our deep selves and dream good new things for humanity. We should try and make those dreams real. We should keep trying to raise higher the conditions and possibilities of this world. Then maybe one day, after much striving, we might well begin to create a world justice and a new light that could inspire a 10-second silence of wonder. Okay, that's it. The deep dive is over for this evening. I hope that gave you a little bit to think about, but not too much before going to sleep. Stay well, sleep well. See you soon.